Welcome to our post UFC 254 show. I'm John Pollock along with Phil Chertok. Don't look at your watch. Just take it all in. You don't have to look at your watch. All you have to do is look out your window because if you are in the Eastern time zone, it's 5 p.m. Eastern time. And I'm talking to Phil, who simply said, I love this before we went on the air. Phil, it is wonderful to be talking to you when it is not 1 in the morning.
Yeah, it's always great to talk to you, John, but especially when there's still daylight out. We don't need a watch. We just use our sundials. And we know that it's 5:10 in the afternoon. And once we wrap up this post show, we've got an entire evening ahead of us.
That's right. Are you going to be watching Bound for Glory tonight?
What's Bound for Glory?
All right, moving on. We have a lot to discuss on today's show. I don't even have to say tonight's show. It is barely tonight, but we're going to be going through the whole UFC 254 card that just wrapped up with a lot of big news coming out of it, especially at the conclusion of the main event in Abu Dhabi on Yas Island. Their end of 5 straight weeks over on Fight Island. And Phil, I was talking about this earlier this week when we had Cody Saftik on the show to preview the card, was what impact this time slot might have when it comes to pay-per-view buys. Do you see this being something that the time slot would have any discernible difference in terms of the buys, or do you where did you kind of peg this card regarding interest overall?
I think it's a massive card. Khabib is the second biggest star in the UFC, and his last fight against Dustin Poirier, who's not the biggest name, maybe comparable level to Gaethje, and that was one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time. So, and that was also during this earlier time slot. So I suspect that this event is still going to do very well. It would definitely do better in North America if it were in a evening time slot, but I still think it's going to do over 1 million buys, and wow. It's almost, I think, even international. I mean, we never know internationally, but it sounds like it's off the rails internationally.
Yeah, I mean, this year I have found it's been very difficult to kind of put your finger on what level a show is going to hit. There have been ones that have really surprised me, like Gaethje and Ferguson. I think they really benefited from when that happened in May, so early in the pandemic. Like July, the 3 title fights and the addition of Jorge Masvidal, that one just surged through the roof once Jorge Masvidal was added to that. And on the other side of things, I think that like Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic, even at 500,000 buys, which is, I would definitely not call that a failure, but I saw that fight being, flirting with 1 million buys, and it didn't come close to it. So it'll be interesting to see. Certainly, I would say that a lot of people assume that Khabib's retirement, it was in the near future. I just don't think many believed it would have been tonight. Certainly, if they knew that going in, I think that would have been something that, like, Khabib just strikes me as one that is like separate from our typical fighter retirements, in that with his, I take it pretty seriously that this is probably it for him.
I completely agree. I mean, I always took it seriously whenever he said, he wasn't going to fight Conor again, or he needed to fight somebody else before him. I believed him all those times, and I believe him now as well. Now, that's not to say he couldn't be motivated for the right event, but a lot of people talked about his father's legacy and that 30-0, or the legacy his father and him wanted for Khabib. But, the legacy is beyond just his mixed martial arts record. His father had a very big role in the province, and you can see that that's something that's going to be important for Khabib to carry forward, something that goes beyond just competing. And he really has nothing left to prove, so I could see it sticking.
Well, let's jump into the card, and we're going to start there with the main event. It was a very big fight involving Khabib Nurmagomedov. Coming into this fight, as Phil mentioned, this is the first fight since his father passed away earlier this year, who also served as his head coach. So that was a very big theme throughout the week leading into this, was that absence. Taking on interim champion Justin Gaethje. And in the opening round, Phil, what we saw was Nurmagomedov placing a lot of pressure on Justin Gaethje, and I thought was pretty tactical in the sense that we were starting to see the Justin Gaethje like the pre-Ferguson version where he was throwing very wildly, and I thought kind of playing into this more reckless style. However, the other side of that coin was that once he started to find his rhythm, he did start having some success standing and was landing on Khabib, which then prompted Khabib to execute his first takedown attempt right near the end of the round. And like there were no games at the beginning of the second round. He took Justin Gaethje down and immediately mounted him and switched to a triangle. And then Justin Gaethje is tapping, and referee Jason Herzog obviously missed the first series of taps, and then it was a delayed stoppage, but this was a clear submission victory for Nurmagomedov, who improves to 29-0. And then afterwards, he announces that today was my final fight. He was, it was a very emotional scene afterward. He is in tears afterwards, that you can see that this is someone that must have put a lot to the recesses of his mind to just get through this fight week. And it seemed like it all came crashing down on him once this fight was over. There's not too many post fights that I think have hit this level in terms of just a fighter just falling apart emotionally. It was like quite the scene after.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a lot of fighters deal with difficult situations in their personal lives, and that come out in the octagon. But I think what was unique about this situation was the fact that Khabib's father was so integral, not only to his career, but the sport. And, you know, it was already so close to Khabib's career, even if he did decide he was going to go with that 30-0. So, it's difficult to imagine all the emotions, all the pressure. I mean, Khabib fights with all the pressure of the world already on him with that undefeated record, and the entire, people of Dagestan behind him. But he was able to, obviously achieve victory despite all that pressure, like he usually does. But it was extremely emotional to watch that.
What did you think about the first round in terms of like it was until that late takedown? I mean, this was contested on the feet. What did you think of Gaethje's game plan in the first couple of minutes?
Well, in the first sort of minute, I thought, it was pretty good. Gaethje was keeping his distance. He landed his leg kick a couple times. But once Khabib just started pushing the pace, Gaethje was on the back foot the whole time. And even when he was landing his counter left, which was significant, Khabib would just keep pressing forward. And I was amazed at the pace, actually. I could not imagine.
You knew, I think, in this first round, it's like, if they hold up this pace, like this is a fight that is not going all that long. I didn't necessarily think it was going to end so quickly in the second, but like this was a pace that Khabib seemed perfectly comfortable to stay at, and was just like wearing down Justin Gaethje. There was no feeling out process.
Yeah, and then when he started landing, he was getting more liberal with his shots, doubling up on his jab, following that, and he was landing with a lot of success, landing with his own kicks, even though it wasn't the most technical, because he had all that pressure, and because Gaethje is constantly worried about the takedown, he can kind of have his will with him.
Afterwards, Nurmagomedov, he announced his retirement. Justin Gaethje stuck around in the octagon and was very complimentary of Khabib as well. And, so much that comes out of this. The fight that everyone had looked at as that potential 30th was the George St. Pierre fight that looks to be something that Khabib, he went from very much wanting that fight to, I think, realizing like this, he's not going to go through all of this again. He was very adamant. Like, I have nothing left to prove. There's always going to be that next fight. There will always be that elusive opponent, or with a record, always one more number to go a step higher. But I think he leaves as right in that conversation of the short list of the greatest fighters of all time. I don't know if he's going to be people's number one, but I think he's in that conversation of your 3 to 5 greatest fighters of all time. And as well, the UFC lightweight championship, I think the unofficial winners of this announcement, Phil, are Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier, because I will be stunned if that January 23rd fight is not for this vacant title. As much as that will upset some other lightweights, I think
it will be for the vacant 155-pound title contested at 170 pounds.
Well, now when Dana says it makes no sense to have that fight at 170, it really does make no sense to have it at 170, even though Dana was more than willing to have illogical welterweight fights with Conor against Donald Cerrone earlier this year. But I think that just puts all the pieces in place that will be the championship fight, and you'll probably have Tony Ferguson, who's going to be very upset about that. But that's where I totally see this all playing out.
I agree. And there's Michael Chandler in there as well, right? Who probably only needs one fight to even get to a title shot at this point. And it's a great division. It's so deep. So, as much as I love Khabib, having a new sort of string of champions could be a really exciting thing for probably the deepest or second deepest division in the sport.
It's quick to process, but where do you place Nurmagomedov in terms of like some of the greats? And I mean, someone, when you look at the fighters that he fought at lightweight, I mean, it's a pretty impressive list. And he also goes down as being one half of the most successful UFC pay-per-views of all time with Conor McGregor. And as much as Dana has noted about cards that are tracking to be at that level, I think it's gonna be a long time before we see a fight that tops 2.4 million buys.
Yeah, I mean, it takes two to tango. The thing with Khabib is the only thing that sort of his career lacked was that great opponent. And sort of, I guess, because of the success and because of the infamy of the rivalry, he will be linked to Conor McGregor. And yeah, it's not going to be possible to generate that many pay-per-view buys with Conor unless there's a worthy opponent. So from that perspective, he's going to be missed. In terms of where he ranks all-time greats, I mean, it's pretty fresh. I've been a huge fan of his since he beat Rafael dos Anjos. When I saw that, I was like, this guy is the best lightweight. And I put him at number one. Undisputed, undefeated, 29-0. I mean, in my view, he's never lost a round. I know officially he lost the third round to Conor, but I go back and I think he was just playing pitter-patter with him until he decided to take him down in the end. So, I mean, nobody's been more dominant.
Yeah, and it's going to be the last, I would say, like 3 years where you saw like Michael Johnson gave him problems standing, but then that turned into a mauling by the end of that fight. Edson Barbosa was as one-sided as we've ever seen Edson Barbosa be a part of. Then you had the Iaquinta fight. That was a very difficult fight to really assess given all of the changes that week and how he ends up with Al Iaquinta, but then has the Conor McGregor fight, Dustin Poirier, no one's made Dustin Poirier look like that in a long time. And then tonight, I mean, relative ease with Justin Gaethje. I don't think you can ever say Khabib was in trouble tonight.
I completely agree. I mean, even though he's got a chin, man, because he took some shots here too, yep. And he's taking shots in other fights.
Yeah, Gaethje was throwing, and I mean, Khabib is never going to be remembered for his stand-up ability, but it creates it's very unconventional that forces you to have to react and make mistakes. And I mean, he showed you right at the end that takedown is always there for him, and then didn't play around at all in the second. He mounted him in seconds in that round.
Mm-hmm. And also with that finish in the second round, he was very aggressive right away. He went to mount, went to arm triangle, didn't get the arm triangle, went to the regular triangle, which puts you on your back. So he was looking for the finish right away, whereas usually in his fights, he wears guys down until they give them the finish. And I think even his whole style in this fight was just, he wanted to be very aggressive. I mean, he threw 2 flying knees, one of which landed, which is not unusual for him. Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
How about that bicep slicer that he was going for?
That's right. Yes.
Dude, if you've ever been put in a bicep slicer, I cannot convey the pain when that thing is properly applied. It feels like the term bicep slicer is the perfect description of what that feels like.
Yeah, it looked like Justin sort of had a hand in there or something that prevented it. And also, I don't think Khabib was like going 100% for it, but he was definitely going for that armbar.
But it was just, it was almost like, I've got your arm here. And
that's right.
More so just ending the round on a pretty dominant note there.
Absolutely.
So we will see what is next for the UFC lightweight division. But as I said off the top, I think that this is one of those retirements where I'm not like when you and I have come on here after a number of retirements. And I would say the Henry Cejudo one is the one where it's like, dude, I am not taking this one seriously in the least. And I mean, the guy's already talking about, doing boxing, whatever. With the Khabib one, this is one that I put a lot more stock into.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's a man of principle. His teammates have said so. His coaches have said so. And you can tell that the UFC even knows so. Like, even with their, it was always their desire to get that Conor fight, but Dana never pushed it too hard publicly. So I think that the UFC has a lot of respect for Khabib. And as we've said, he's a man of his word. And so I'm going to actually say this retirement has a 75 to 80% likelihood of sticking.
On a side note, tonight we had a two-man booth with Jon Anik and Daniel Cormier. And previously, Daniel Cormier had always been, when it came to teammates, that he would not be in the booth for those fights. But he opted to do this card with Khabib fighting. And he had also worked with Tai Tuivasa in the lead-up. How did you feel Daniel Cormier called this main event?
I thought he did great. I mean, I think Cormier is kind of the best guy they have right now in his role. Him and Jon Anik are the top two. And I thought he did. He acknowledges his biases. And he's also able to step away from those things. And also, because he has such a close relationship with Khabib, I think that gave invaluable insight into the broadcast that you could not get with any other person. So I thought he did a tremendous job, and I didn't notice anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that that's what you lean on, is that when you have these fighters, like that, you are going to have those natural conflicts when you're talking about active or recently active fighters. But the other side is that, okay, you have your straight man in Jon Anik that's going to give you like the that plays the guy right down the middle. And for a Cormier, you establish that right off the bat, and you get a lot of insight that another analyst is not going to have, because they don't have that meaningful relationship that Daniel Cormier has with a number of these fighters.
Yeah, I think the telling moment was actually at the end of the fight, after the post-fight interview, where they were sort of asking Daniel Cormier about the retirement, and he was just like, man, he was like really upset. He's like, I thought he had one more in him, and we were gonna, but
I missed all of that. That's really
interesting. And then he was like, he means it. Like he like, it was very true to Daniel Cormier. It hit him hard, and that was a great moment. So I'd say go check that out.
Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannoneer was the co-feature. This was one of the few fights that went to decision. Of the 12 fights, we had 3 decisions on this show. And in this fight, it was Robert Whittaker and utilizing his jab. That was established early on. I thought the most competitive round was the first, and I was in the minority here that I thought that the leg damage that Jared Cannoneer was able to do in this round, to me, offset the jab work from Robert Whittaker. So I did go with Cannoneer in the first round, but most had it for Robert Whittaker. Second and third, I didn't think there was any debate, even though the judges' scorecards appeared all over the place, even though they all arrived at the same score. Whittaker just continued using this jab. He was swelling up Cannoneer's eye. And then in the third round, Whittaker had his best round. He dropped him with his head kick and swarmed Cannoneer and eventually mounted him. Cannoneer, to his credit, was ultra tough, got back to his feet and landed a big right hand. It was his best shot of the whole fight, but not enough. Whittaker, on my card, clearly won rounds 2 and 3. So I had it 29-28. And Robert Whittaker puts himself in a position where a rematch with Israel Adesanya is going to have to be discussed, because I think a lot of people were assuming that, hey, Jared Cannoneer is the more optimal victor in this fight because he represents a fresh opponent, and Israel Adesanya has already teed up this fight. But I thought that was going to be quite the task for Cannoneer, and Robert Whittaker gets the victory.
Yeah, I was favoring Cannoneer in this fight because of his heavy hands, which didn't play a factor whatsoever until the very, very end of the third round. He did have those powerful leg kicks. I thought they were going to be effective at adding up. I didn't think they were enough for me to give him the first round, but it was close. And even the second round I thought was pretty close as well. Just Whittaker's jab started to add up a little bit more. And then, yeah, the third round was pretty clear. Regarding where this puts Whittaker in the title picture, I mean, clearly he deserves a title shot. I mean, he's beaten the best of the best, 10-1, I mean, plus a draw or whatever. And, it's hard to deny him, especially considering there's no one really else deserving as him. The only sort of wrench in this whole thing is, there's John Jones out there, and Israel Adesanya and John Jones seem to be on a crash course for fighting, unless they're the biggest, teases on earth.
Yeah, the only other fight coming up, it's Jack Hermanson and Darren Till, which, Whittaker has a win over Till, and I don't see Hermanson leapfrogging Whittaker. So I would say Whittaker is the only candidate at the moment for Adesanya. And you're quickly seeing like this middleweight division. They're searching for contenders. And I think Robert Whittaker has put himself on an island here for that next title fight.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, he's earned it. He's got the resume, but there's this John Jones thing that's out there as well.
Alexander Volkov and Walt Harris in heavyweight action. Alexander Volkov was just landing at range. Anytime Harris would come into the pocket, Volkov was knocking him out, not knocking him out, but sending him back, and then just unloaded on Harris against the fence after this combination that rocked him. Into the second round we go. Harris did fight back off the fence. And then in the second, Volkov uses a teep kick right to the body, and Harris is done. He gets annihilated with strikes. The referee steps in to stop the fight. At first they were confused, thinking maybe he had kicked him low, but it was as clean as a kick could be. It just totally stopped Walt Harris in his tracks at 1:15 of the second round. So Alexander Volkov bounces back after a loss to Curtis Blades, and he won on his 32nd birthday.
Happy birthday.
What a way to celebrate. I mean,
it was a pretty impressive win, I got to say, because there's a lot of big fights on this card, so it kind of got overshadowed a little bit. But once Volkov established his range in the first round, you could tell that Walt Harris didn't have anything for him. Like, he was hurting him in all sorts of ways, and Harris was just he was in a lot of trouble, couldn't find his way inside. I was really impressed with Volkov here.
Yeah, I thought that he's not had the most consistent campaign here in the UFC. He's lost some important fights along the way. The key ones being Derek Lewis and Curtis Blades, but he realistically, to stay in that pack where, unlike what we just talked about with middleweight, in heavyweight, it's almost like a backlog of challengers who are ready for Stipe Miocic. Volkov needed this win to stay in that pack. So, there's other contenders for them at heavyweight that you can find for Alexander Volkov, but this doesn't get him into championship conversations, but it keeps him in that top 5, I would say. Phil Hawes versus Jacob Malcoon, who was a replacement on this card. Phil Hawes is this prospect who has been talked about for years. He got a shot on Dana White's Contender Series 3 years ago, lost. Then he got, as part of the Ultimate Fighter Season 23, he lost on that show to Andrew Sanchez, who won the season. And then he came back last month onto the Contender Series, won, getting himself a contract, and then they turned him around for this card. And dude, he didn't waste any time. He just swarmed Jacob Malcoon against the fence, dropped him, and finished him with strikes in 18 seconds. And it's always hard to look at 18 seconds and what you take away from it, but it's the wow factor that you come into with. And there's going to be a ton of hype on Phil Hawes, but there's quite a foundation behind him that has led to him getting this spot in the UFC.
Yeah, Malcoon, I mean, he came out scared like a deer in the headlights, and you can understand why. He was about to get hit by a truck. And for Hawks here, he's got a lot of potential. It was a great performance on a huge card. I'm forgetting the name of the guy who had the amazing knockout 2 weeks ago, who they've already got back coming up in a couple weeks. The viral video.
Joaquin Buckley.
Yes, Buckley. So Buckley's getting a turnaround right away. I could see that happening as well right here for Hawes. I mean, it was a really quick, really exciting win. Send him back to Vegas and get him on a card in a few weeks and ride, the momentum of this viral knockout.
If you want like the fast track to Dana White's heart, it's going like Khamzat Chimaev. Like that is going to be the blueprint for these fighters to just instantly turn around and keep fighting and do it in impressive fashion. Like Chimaev is now looking at fighting Leon Edwards in December. And like the other side of it is that at some point, a guy like Chimaev is going to be saying like, man, I'm fighting top 5 guys now, and I'm still on my first UFC contract. I want to get paid. And that without fail always happens. And
I've got a feeling he is no longer on his first UFC contract.
Well, I hope not at this point, if he's going to be headlining a fight night card in 2 months time. So, but that's the fact, like you want to get onto the fast track. Like that's how you do it. And if you're a Phil Hawes, yeah, sign me up, get me back in January or something like that. Something real quick to build on it. So he looks super spectacular here.
Yeah, it was really exciting, and 18 seconds of work, probably a bonus to go along with it. And I think a lot of people want to see him soon.
We have the bonuses.
Oh.
No bonus for Phil Hawes.
Oh my!
We got fight of the night we'll get to this with Casey Kenny against Nathaniel Wood. I can't disagree with that. Performance of the night bonuses: Khabib Nurmagomedov and Magomed Ankalaev. I think Hawes would have edged out Ankalaev.
Yeah, I agree as well. There was a lot of great performances and finishes, so can't fault them too much. But yeah, I think Hawes
finishes on this card.
Yeah, but that Hawes one was just gnarly. I mean, they had to Malcoon. He couldn't even stand up for the post-fight, announcements. They had to carry him out, so it was a nasty knockout.
It was a lot for this guy, man. This was his 5th professional fight. He's on a pay-per-view main card. Like it was a lot on him in this one. And yeah, he was. They showed him afterwards, and he just looked like his soul had left him after this knockout. Lauren Murphy defeated Lilia Shakarova. This one in the opening round. Really not a whole lot happened until Murphy defended the single leg takedown and landed some strikes to the side of the head. Then in the second, Shakarova, not all that different from what we were just talking about with Malcoon. Like here is someone that is taking a late replacement fight. This was supposed to be Cynthia Calvillo fighting Lauren Murphy, but she contracted COVID-19 and was removed from this card. So Shakarova making her promotional debut. She was put against the fence, and then Murphy took her down, got the back, and secured a rear naked choke. It's Lauren Murphy's first submission win of her career, coming at 3:31 of the second round. And then if you want the template of how to handle a post-fight interview, I'm not saying Lauren Murphy is the like slam dunk pick to have the next flyweight title fight, but my God, did she lay out her resume that to state her case. There was no, we'll see what the matchmakers have to say and I'll do whatever they want me to do. No, it was, look at all that I've done. I am not walking into this cage again until I'm challenging for this flyweight title.
Yeah, I mean, it was like she was arguing for a spot on the Supreme Court. I was very impressed.
I think even the Democrats would be behind her here.
Yeah, it was very fact based. She laid out her CV and statistics on the back of her playing card, and hey, it was good. And it's a situation.
This is
where
not a deep division. Like you should be doing this. Like, dude, Jennifer Maia is fighting for this championship next month. So Cynthia Calvillo was like the perfect person for her to be fighting. But I mean, Jessica Andrade has just entered the division, but she's had one fight. So Lauren Murphy has as much of an argument as anyone to fight this winner after next month's fight.
I totally agree. And I think the UFC would be happy to line up Valentina Shevchenko very quickly for another fight once the November pay-per-view is done.
Valentina Shevchenko is just like, stack them up for me, sure. Like it's
line them up, bang, 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 bang.
Dude, like there's just such a gulf between her and everybody else. But that's what the state of the division is. Magomed Ankalaev, our performance of the night winner, so spoiler, he won this fight, against Ion Cutelaba. This has been the most cursed fight this year. They fought back in February, where Ankalaev won by stoppage in 38 seconds, and it was a brutal stoppage that I think everyone agreed was too early. So they tried to rematch them, and 3 times this rematch fell apart. This was their 4th attempt to put this fight together. And the fact that they pulled this off, Phil, I mean, there's going to be the grand what if from Dana after tonight will be Khabib and Ferguson. I couldn't get that together, but this is my consolation. Magomed Ankalaev and Ion Cutelaba eventually had their rematch.
Yeah, there's a long list of never fights that you feel Dana needs to put on. And there's one that I'm still worried about, and that's TJ Dillashaw versus Uriah Faber. I just have a feeling that 2021 is going to produce that fight.
I don't think that's crazy. I think both guys want it. I think that's the best fight for TJ to come back to. And Uriah stated he wants that fight. I don't think that's a crazy bet to make for 2021.
Yes. Well, to get back to the point on Ankalaev, hey, he did a great job. This was a really exciting fight the first time, however long it lasted, less than a minute. And you could tell that they were both a little bit gun shy at first here. It took 2 minutes to get the feeling out process. And Cutelaba, he came in with a game plan, but Ankalaev just kept the distance, was really sharp and really poised, and then finally just landed that brutal finish.
Yeah, he was very patient, drew Cutelaba in, and then had that powerful left hand. He dropped him once when Cutelaba went to spin, which was ill-advised, and then several minutes later dropped Cutelaba and finished him. And that was it. It was a pretty dominant win. He got on top of him with hammer fists, and Cutelaba was done. Ankalaev, this was his 5th win in a row. So it's kind of like this whole year has been dedicated to this guy in Ion Cutelaba. So, I mean, for him, it's probably nice to move on from Cutelaba because this is someone that can be a contender at 205 pounds. Like his name is never discussed among contenders, but I think with this win, he'll be thrust in that direction.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for him to actually, I think the fact that he was stuck in this fight for so long really hurt him. So now he can move on, get, 1 or 2 more fights against some names in a pretty thin division. And yeah, I definitely don't see him being very far from a title shot.
How much of the prelims did you get to see?
I saw everything except the early prelims.
Okay, well, I can quickly go through those. But headlining the televised prelims was Stefan Struve in his 24th UFC fight, taking on Tai Tuivasa, who was needed a win here. He's lost 3 in a row. And they noted that this is Tuivasa. He's dropped weight in the lead up to this. They mentioned that when he fought, I think it was the Junior Dos Santos fight, he started his fight camp at 322 pounds. Now, when they say that Tuivasa has lost weight, the man's still coming in at 265 for these heavyweight fights, but not cutting as much. So he exercised patience here. It's always, I think, take some time to adjust to Stefan Struve, who had a 9.5-inch reach on Tuivasa. But then Tuivasa would go inside in the clinch and start landing. Then he was throwing leg kicks. And then at the end, he hit this big flurry and Struve went down and he finished Struve by knockout with 1 second to go in the first round. Tuivasa then hopped the cage and dude, they were on this guy. Get back in the octagon. He wanted a shoey. They were explaining that ain't happening. Not here. And the man was not exercising sanitation here during this pandemic. And he seemed very sad that he had to go back into the octagon without his shoey. So he gets the victory. For Stefan Struve, he has now lost 5 of 6. And this guy's been in the UFC since 2009. I don't know if he will return to the UFC after this one, Phil. Like at some point, it's you cut bait, and I think that's going to be the decision that they likely arrive at after this one.
It would not surprise me whatsoever. He's had an up and down career, usually down when it comes against fighting, the top level opponents. He also has a history of some pretty brutal knockout losses where he sort of always crumples in the exact same fashion. I feel if we overlaid every single crumpling image of Stefan Struve, they'd all be in unison. But yeah, he was a fighter who never could really use his length effectively. Tuivasa fought a really smart fight using leg kicks and his big overhand to get on the inside. Then when he was on the inside, just wrestling enough, roughing him up, putting the crown of his head underneath the chin. For anybody who's ever done wrestling, when somebody gets you in that position, that is just a brutal, brutal position. And actually, because of the height discrepancy, Tuivasa had a lot of leverage there. And, it's not going to end the fight, but it wears on you. And then in the last minute, he realized that, there's not much left to, not a lot of time left. And he went for it and got the finish.
Nathaniel Wood and Casey Kenny. This was fought at a catch weight of 140 pounds. They're both naturally bantamweights. This fight was awesome. The first round, I highly recommend watching this round. This pace that they fought at for these first 5 minutes, I mean, the announcers were watching this of how can they possibly keep this pace up? They did a pretty good job of it in the second round of keeping it up. It was just the two were just going for it here. These were very close rounds to score, but it seemed to be that Wood was landing more volume, but it was Kenny with more of the power strikes that seemed to be leaving more of an impression. I thought the second round was a coin flip round, very, very close. And then in the third, I went with Casey Kenny. I actually went 30-27 for Casey Kenny, but I was very close on the second of whether it was a Kenny round or a round for Wood. But it was Casey Kenny getting the unanimous decision, 30-27 and a pair of 29-28s. And as I mentioned, both got the fight of the night bonus, which I thought this clearly was. That first round was amazing.
Yeah, great fight. The first round, you could really tell it was, if you're going to give me one, I'm going to give you one right back. And so everybody was taking one shot and giving one shot and going back and forth. And you were totally correct. It was Wood who had sort of more movement, more volume. He had a lot of leg kicks, but Kenny just had a little bit more power. And I gave Kenny the edge in round one. I thought that was a very close round as well. I gave Wood the edge in round two, another super close round. And then the third I gave to Casey. I thought that was the clearest round, just mainly because of the power shots he landed. It looked like it was tipping in Wood's favor because Casey wasn't able to keep up the pace. He was getting tired
too in the third. You could see that, the pace was having an effect. I thought more on Kenny than Wood, but I gave Kenny the third round. So great fight to go back and check out. There were some very good fights on this show and great performances. Then we had Shavat Rakhmanov defeating Alex Oliveira. Alex Oliveira was one of two fighters who missed weight. So Oliveira has the distinction of missing weight at both lightweight and welterweight.
Sorry, you're going to need to repeat that. Oh, is that about Oliveira missing weight at all these weight classes? It doesn't matter what weight class we put him at. He's going to miss weight.
He missed at lightweight a few years ago when he fought Will Brooks. Then he moved up to welterweight, and he missed welterweight here by 2 pounds. So maybe middleweight's next for the Cowboy.
Yeah, honestly, I was kind of nervous because if you go back to that Will Brooks fight, it was a pretty unfair advantage that he had in that fight. He looked huge in there, and you could tell that extra weight was going to be a problem. But in this one, I was worried the same thing was going to happen because I'd never heard of this Shavkat Rakhmanov. Yes, he's undefeated, but we hadn't really seen him fight anywhere in the West. He had headlined a couple of M1 shows. So I was just sort of really worried that this newcomer was going to get smoked by a UFC veteran who was, exploiting the weight rules again. But nothing could be farther from the truth. What an amazing debut.
Yeah, he was making his UFC debut. And he entered at one point with a knee to the body and landed this left hook and hit these big strikes against the cage. And then all of a sudden, in the closing minute, leaped up, secured a guillotine, and you couldn't tell how tight it was, but boom, Oliveira taps out with 20 seconds left in the opening round, and Rakhmanov, undefeated, continues to be undefeated, improving to 13-0, and it's a super deep weight class at 170 pounds, but a really good debut for him here that, to me, like, you're already like jumping into the, not the deepest end of the pool, but Alex Oliveira is a very good win. And I think the fact that he missed weight as well, it's that much more impressive.
I couldn't agree more. As well, the style is very interesting. I mean, if he's a striker, and they were saying that he's got an incredibly good guillotine. So that means he can strike with impunity. Always, if wrestler wants to take him down, he can just use that guillotine. Even if he's not going to get the finish, you can use that guillotine to reverse or just defend the takedowns. So, I mean, a win against Cowboy Oliveira in your first UFC fight, yeah, that means you're going to get, you're going to go up the rankings very quickly.
And Sam Alvey took on Da-Un Jung. This one went 3 rounds. This was one of our few decisions on the card. I had Alvey winning the first 2 rounds. In the first round, Smiling Sam got poked in the eye multiple times. This guy looked like he had lost an eye by the end of the first round as the horn sounded. In the second, Alvey was just, they had noted that for previous fights, he just had a really slow start. And we saw that in his last outing, where it was really not until the 3rd round that he came alive. Well, in this one, I thought he banked the first 2 rounds and was just, Jung was just not being all that aggressive. He would have a few moments, but he wouldn't follow up. And Alvey was just going after the legs and, being much the busier of the two. Then come the 3rd round, Jung catches and drops Alvey because all of a sudden the man has discovered, I've got this right elbow from hell that I am going to annihilate this guy with. And he hit him with several of these elbow strikes, knocking him down. Alvey came back and hit this right uppercut and unloaded on Jung, but then Jung rocks Alvey with another elbow, and they had another big elbow shot right off the break. Jung was getting into 10-8 territory, but I couldn't go there for the 3rd round, so I had it 29-28 for Alvey. We go to the judges' scorecards, 29-28 Alvey, 29-28 Jung, and the 3rd judge has it 28-28, scoring the 3rd, a 10-8, so we get a split draw. And the look on Sam Alvey's face, like, what the hell? It's like nothing here. Anyway, I mean, it was an entertaining enough fight, not the fight of the night, but yes, a split draw at the end of this. I don't know. What did you think? I was surprised that we got a scorecard for Jung in this. I thought that the draw I can get, but 29-28 seemed, I don't know. I couldn't fully endorse that one.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I think maybe I'd have to go back to the scorecard. I guess they gave him the first one because Alvey was moving backwards more in that round, maybe. But yeah, Alvey was actually doing a lot better than he has in his last few fights. He was more active. He wasn't just waiting for that one kill shot. He was trying to set it up. He was using the same setups, but it was just a little bit more active. And, I think he'd lost 4 in a row. So this goes like 5 without a win, which is kind of tough. I gave him the W. Hey, run it back. It was a fun fight. Make it 5 rounds.
Yes. Coming to a town near you, UFC Fight Night, Alvey Jung. And then on the early prelims, we had Miranda Maverick defeating Lyanna Jojua. This was a fight that ended with a bit of controversy at the end of it. Miranda Maverick is 23 years old, making her debut at the UFC. She's been fighting with Invicta for years. And Phil, she is seeking her PhD in industrial organizational psychology. Smart backup to have in case the fight career does not work out for you. But she looked very good in this fight. She was putting her combinations together. Jojua was on the defensive. And then it was the night of elbows because Maverick cracked her with a left elbow. And her nose is just spurting out blood. And the round ends. And Jojua goes to her corner. And they're just like trying to contain this blood that is coming down the nose. And with that, you just hear Jojua yell, "No, no," and they wave it off and the fight is stopped. And I've got to say, like, sometimes you see like bad cuts that look bad, but are really not all that bad. this is where I'd categorize that. I thought it was a little bit of an overreaction to stop the fight based on this. Dana White stayed afterwards. The nose was not broken. She got stitched up, and I don't know. This one seemed to be, to me, a little too cautious by stopping the fight between rounds just because they couldn't get the bleeding to stop. I mean, the nose is like, it's not like it's affecting your vision or anything either. It's cosmetically, it looks like a bad cut, but I think it could have continued. And then we had Joelle Alvarez, another guy who missed weight, taking on Alexander Yakovlev. And this one ended, Alvarez went for a guillotine, and it was pretty deep, but Yakovlev escaped, and then Alvarez transitioned to an armbar and got the submission in 3 minutes. So Alvarez improves to 3-1 in the UFC. Third win in a row. This follows up on his guillotine win against Joseph Duffy earlier this year. And that was the card. A lot of finishes, Phil.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of energy. It was nice to see a card in the middle of the day.
Man, if this wasn't a pandemic, we could go out partying tonight.
Hey, man, I have all of stage 2 at my disposal. So, yeah, a wild night of beers
downtown
at home.
Toronto. I'm afraid to sneeze, so
yeah.
I'm not going anywhere.
We actually have somebody on the line in our Discord right now. If anybody else wants to join, they can just join the Discord and join the Post Lives call channel. If you want to hear from him right now, how does that sound to you, John?
Let's do it.
All right. So on the line right now, we have the one, the only John Fury 316. John Fury, what's the bottom line on UFC 254?
I thought I liked the card. Wasn't surprised with the main event. I picked Khabib to win. I was surprised though it was in the second round, and I was surprised it took him like 4 minutes to land a takedown. I kind of expected him to do it like really fast. But he's the greatest. He's the top 3 greatest of all time in my opinion.
Who are the 3?
The question
who's he in company with in your
I put
ranking?
John Jones and GSP. Yeah. John Jones GSP. That's I think the UFC just hit a jackpot with this retirement, because if this is a true retirement, I'm thinking that Conor Poirier fight is now for the title. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think unless there's some negotiating curveball that Conor McGregor throws them, I think 100% that's the title fight.
And even if he maybe comes back to fight GSP, that won't be for a title anyways. So it works out perfectly for UFC. Go John.
No, go ahead.
I also think for Gaethje, I mean, what do you guys think next for him? I'm thinking him versus Dan Hooker, 2 guys that recently lost, and I'm thinking Chandler and Ferguson if they can work out the financial.
Yeah, I really like the Chandler-Ferguson option. I think that's a great fight to make. And that would be one. I know sometimes they try and put, your contenders underneath a championship fight, but I think that card, that can headline its own card, Chandler and Ferguson. That I would not put it on the McGregor-Poirier card. I like those 2 together. Yeah, Dan Hooker is certainly in the mix as someone like there's not too many bad options that you can make with Justin Gaethje. I guess it's finding fights for him that are meaningful, because he's going to be wanting to, one fight and be right back into the mix. So Dan Hooker's as good an option as anyone, I think, when you're talking about those top guys. Like once you're getting out of a Dan Hooker, it's, Paul Felder, Charles Oliveira. Those are all stylistically fun fights at 155.
Which one, though, out of those 2 would get the next? Like, let's say, hypothetical, because I think Conor would be, let's say Conor wins the title. You have the Ferguson Chandler, you got Gaethje. Which one of those, does it based on who wins, or which one gets the next title? Like the next title shot, like hypothetical.
I think that has to be a little mini tournament. I don't think you can, because all those guys are like Gaethje, Ferguson are both coming off of losses. So to put them in the title shot after, let's say, Conor or Poirier gets 2 wins in a row and becomes this theoretical lightweight champion, I don't see that. So I like that fight. I like Gaethje, well, not Gaethje versus Ferguson, but I like the idea of Ferguson versus Chandler. I think that has more likelihood of becoming the number 1 contender fight than necessarily Gaethje's next fight.
Yeah, Ferguson definitely needs a big win after that Gaethje performance to get himself back into that mix, because it's very hard to see Ferguson, even if he beat Chandler, kind of just leapfrogging Gaethje. So it's kind of one of the, like, that quagmire that they have at lightweight that has to sort itself out. And when Conor McGregor is in that whole mix, it's very hard to just forecast what's going to happen, because there's going to be hiccups along the way to make all of these fights and make sense of it. But I think this gives you a direction for Poirier and McGregor that you can now attach a championship to that fight. That makes the most sense.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you guys for so much. And John, I loved your UFC preview show and all your wrestling
thank
shows.
You very
I listened
much.
to all of them.
Thanks a lot for calling in. We appreciate it. Phil, are we going to have back-to-back retirements with Anderson Silva fighting Uriah Hall next weekend, which in the promo and to MMA Junkie this week, he said, this will probably be my last fight in the UFC, which, I mean, there's a few qualifiers in that statement.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like the UFC wants this to be his retirement fight. Like, they're the ones pushing it. It also is like the last fight on his contract, and they don't want to sign him to another contract probably because he's going to demand a lot of money, even independent of if he wins or loses. So is it possible that he ends up fighting in another promotion? I could see that. I mean, he's always sort of talked about Roy Jones as being an inspiration in his career, and Roy Jones is still fighting.
He's busy, man. He's got Mike Tyson next.
That's right. But even prior to that sort of novelty fight, Roy Jones was fighting well past his prime, and he just had a love for it. So I could see Anderson doing that, win or lose, on next weekend.
The next time that we'll be back will be the UFC 255 pay-per-view that's happening November 21st. It's headlined by two flyweight title fights, Davison Figueiredo against Alex Perez and Valentina Shevchenko against Jennifer Maia. And they showed the main card tonight, just listing 4 fights. The other 2 on the main card being Alan Jouban versus Jared Gooden and Mauricio Shogun Hua against Paul Craig. I think it is safe to say, Phil, this does not look like a big pay-per-view next month.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, in those top,
like, this might be their weakest of the year.
Well, did you list out the full card there? I mean, did they announce it? Because I don't even think they announced, like, what do they have going on that main card? Anything? We don't know. Yeah.
They had, you know what they had on the main card? Because
they did announce it tonight. That's right. It was Shogun versus Paul Craig is on there.
Brandon Moreno against Brandon Royval. That was the 4th fight on the main card. They only had 4 fights listed for the main card.
Yeah, and Jose Aldo versus Marlon Vera. Did they announce that, or is that?
I don't think that was listed on.
Yeah.
It definitely was not listed on the main card fights. So I'm seeing that here, but I don't think that fight's official.
Yeah, so yeah, it's a tough card. I mean, look, they have to fill in this event. They can't all be bangers. They tried to do something for this. It doesn't look like it's going to happen. They don't have to sell tickets, so they can put in another main event in there at some point. I guess this is the test of Valentina's star power. We're going to see, what she can draw. I think they're going to push it around her. I'm not terribly enthusiastic about what the numbers are going to be, but maybe there'll be something creative around the promotion of this event.
So that is going to wrap it up for us. I'm sorry, I'm just stunned. It's 6:00 p.m. and we are saying we are wrapping things up. But Phil, thank you so much for joining me for this. What unfortunately will probably not be a traditional time, but I could definitely get used to this time slot. Maybe we need to move countries and go to some friendlier time zones. Well,
I think so. I mean, based on the statistics, this is our most popular live stream. And we have a lot of...
That's all you, though. That's Phil Chertok.
Well, I don't think so, because you mentioned these other nations. We have some Arabic speakers in the chat. We have some Russian speakers in the chat. So, spasibo большое to all the Russian people and all the Arabic speakers and everybody watching from around the world. I know people in the UK, Australia. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, John.
Thanks as always, folks. We have many shows coming up this weekend. Later tonight, Davey Portman and Nate Milton are going to have the Impact Wrestling Bound for Glory post show, which Phil's going to download to figure out what Bound for Glory is.
Who did you say? Which promotion is it?
Impact Wrestling.
Okay, so they're like the third. They're the third in North America, right?
Yeah. Something tells me if you were scrolling through pay-per-view titles late at night and you saw Bound for Glory, I don't know if wrestling would be the first thing that comes to your mind.
No, I'd probably be very disappointed after ordering that.
And then Sunday night,
It sounds like the type of pay-per-view you'd order for a Zoom call.
Well, Phil, I don't know what that title, where it might lead you on Google searches, but pro wrestling might not be the only avenue it takes you down. On Sunday night, you will have a more traditional themed name for a pay-per-view. It's Hell in a Cell. Where
I'm a big fan of Hell in a Cell. I remember Hell in a Cell.
Well, Phil, if you watch that show, you will get 3 Hell in a Cell matches on Sunday night.
That sounds less appealing than 1 Hell in a Cell match.
Well, can't argue there. But an interesting card nonetheless that is coming up Sunday. Way and I will be live immediately after that show for our double Ice Cap and Espresso members of the Post Wrestling Cafe. You can sign up, postwrestlingcafe.com. Check out all of our stuff at postwrestling.com. And Phil, the MVP of the show, you are always the eternal performance of the night winner here on these post shows.
I'm constantly waiting for my bonus checks.
Anything you want to promote? Any big guests you have coming up? I know it's hard to follow the huge John Pollock show, but anyone you've got coming up in the near future?
No, I don't have anything coming up that I can announce. I'm working on some things, as I've told you as well. Unfortunately, nothing to announce, but hopefully something soon. And people let's promote the Discord. If you haven't joined the Discord, we have a great time during UFC events. There's also people during WWF, WWE, and Impact and AEW events talking about live shows, and we just have a good time, goof off, send some gifts, just have a really silly time when we watch these fights and hang out together.
It's a very fun way to watch the fights. And I didn't even realize you guys that were also in the Discord last weekend for the Lomachenko fight.
Yeah, that was a nice surprise. I mean, there was a really good UFC main event with Brian Ortega versus the Korean Zombie that was leading into Lomachenko, and I've been a big boxing fan longer than I've been a MMA fan. And Lomachenko is at that point where he had sort of been becoming a mainstream star and drawing a lot of attention of non-traditional boxing fans. But he lost. It was a great fight, and it was a lot of fun. And we had fun in Discord, and we'll have fun in Discord next week, probably for the Anderson Silva versus Uriah Hall Halloween match.
Well, you can access the Discord by just going to postwrestling.com, and then at the top where we have all the buttons, you'll never guess, it's listed Discord, and it'll take you right in there, free access, and to hang out with Phil Chertok, value right there. So go check that out, and we will speak with you next month after UFC 255, the Flyweights Takeover pay-per-view.